I've closed over $6 million in high-ticket sales in the last few years. Never relying on these automated funnels doing the heavy lifting. These were on one-on-one calls on multiple different accounts. And I'm going to be honest with you, a lot has changed in these last few years. Almost everything I was taught when I started doesn't work anymore. The space has changed and so have buyers. They are more aware. They are more skeptical and they are more sophisticated. And you know why? Because they've been on sales calls with crappy salespeople that have been over-promising and under-delivering. So while the industry is moving and the buyer is changing, a lot of these sales tactics are still outdated. And following the same old sales advice that's still floating around is like using your rotary phone to call your travel agent to plan your next trip when you literally have Claude on your desktop. So in this video, I'm going to tell you exactly what works, not theory, what I've learned from thousands of sales calls, from millions of dollars in cash collected, and what my students are now actively doing to be number one on the leaderboards. First and foremost, when I got into sales, I was told to find something in the person's Zoom screen to make a comment about, or try and make a connection with wherever they're calling in from, or, oh, that's a cool painting in the back, tell me about that. That does not work anymore. That's sales advice, honestly, from the 90s that somehow trickled its way into high ticket sales. But if you try that anymore now, you just sound like such a rookie. People immediately see you with less status. You don't learn seen as an expert. You're immediately seen as someone that's needy and one of these guys, sweet, every other salesperson I've ever talked to has done this before. Buyers have been on too many calls and they know exactly what to look through, right? The moment you start asking about the weather or start mentioning that you had a cousin that visited their city 3 years ago, they don't care. They want to know if you can solve their problem or not. They know these are all fake rapport building things to try and find a common ground. And all it does is it reduces their trust in you. What actually builds trust is respecting their time by actually going deep into what their problem is. Okay, I'm not saying start the call and go into the pitch, but when you can come across as an authority, when you ask leading, pacing questions and you know what you're looking for, your buyer will automatically, doesn't matter if you're 20 years old, by the way, they will automatically see you as someone as an expert because you are leading the call. And this, by the way, can all be done in your first 2 to 3 minutes of your call, and that will build up way more trust than 10 minutes of fake small talk. Now, something you've probably heard of or even been taught is to always be closing and that everyone is closable. And that comes from this idea that you should be getting these micro yeses throughout the entire call, right? The yes train. That if you get all these small micro yeses, then your prospect is going to be, they're going to be ready to give you a big yes to that big ask at the end of the call. And that can't be further from the truth, especially in 2026. Because what actually happens is your prospects feel that you're fake. And even if they can't explain what's going on, they feel like they're being maneuvered. They don't feel heard. They don't feel like they're really expressing the problems in their situation. They just feel like they're being taken through a process. And when they can feel that, all trust is gone. So even if they can't articulate what's going on, they still pull back. And that's why you get objections at the end of the call that you have no leverage to actually handle. The manufactured yes is one of the most outdated sales tactics. Well, one, it's been around since the 90s. Okay. It is one of the most outdated sales tactics, especially in 2026. One good close, one good asking for the order at the right time, when you've had the right time to build leverage and find your prospect's problem, one good close is worth more than 20 manufactured fake micro yeses. Objection word tracks just don't work the same anymore. How many have heard of this one? Heaviest is the head that wears the crown. I will say this. Well, by the way, if you haven't heard that, you're just too new, and you will. But that line 4 years ago, I used to use it all the time. And it worked really well. It doesn't work anymore. Why? Because everyone and their mother has tried it and used it. And it's so overused that it's become a high ticket sales running joke. But that's the thing with objection word tracks is that if you sound like other reps, right, that have given a prospect a bad experience, you immediately remind them of that because you start doing the same thing that they did, that call is cooked. And you've done all this like heavy lifting for 45 minutes and you've burned the call in the last 5 to 10 minutes. And here's the bigger issue is that only focusing on objection handling is a symptom. Okay. If you're getting a lot of objections, it means that you missed something in your discovery. You didn't go a layer deeper. You didn't address their problem properly. You didn't really find their concern. You didn't find the things that they've tried in the past to really make sure that you're going to position your offer as something that's really going to help them. And maybe you moved forward too early because you were getting all the right buying signals, but you weren't challenging enough and you actually weren't pushing back enough on your prospect. They just told you what they think you want to hear for you to actually pitch them. You should be prioritizing pre-handling objections or getting ahead of them early on in your call. Now, you might not get ahead of every single one, but at least you won't be surprised at the end of the call when they give you an objection because you already started to diagnose it earlier. When your discovery is tighter, your problem is more clear, your calls are shorter, and you get less objections. And if you do that properly, by the time you get to the end of the call, you're really only dealing with logistics and maybe a little bit of fear. Discovery is where the sale happens, not the pitch, not the close. In the discovery, the pitch just like checks off the logistical concerns and the close just gets the person to give you their credit card. But the sale, the transfer of belief, the transfer of conviction, that is happening in the discovery. Because when you go deep enough into someone's situation, like what the real problem is, why they haven't changed, what's actually cost them thinking and acting, behaving the same way, and finding layers deep, what it's like, where it's impacting, how it's impacting, helping them visualize what happens if things change and if they don't, that is what motivates someone to change the right questions. And your prospect not only thinks about it, but articulates why they need to make a change. They start selling themselves because they may have never heard it before or told themselves how serious the problem is. And when they tell themselves, they sell themselves. Like you don't have to convince them of anything. They convince themselves. So you should spend the majority of your time in the discovery. Go deeper where it feels uncomfortable. And even then, go layers deeper. Ask the follow-up question and then the follow-up question after that. Ask more why questions, more why not questions to figure out what is really underneath that. And keep going until you get something true and specific, something that actually matters, something that is worth changing in the mind of the prospect. Because when you can do that, your calls will be more powerful. Your pitch will make more sense, you'll get less objections, and you'll close more deals. Pitching features loses to pitching outcomes. See, when you're on a sales call, at a certain point, prospects are going to be like, all right, man, so what do you do? How much is it? How are you going to help me? And you're going to want to answer that with enough to like satisfy the question, but you don't want to overdo it. You don't want to stay there, and you never want to coach on a sales call. Because here's the reality. No one just gives you $10,000 because they're excited about the video modules they're about to go through. No one wires you 10 racks because they can't wait for week 4 in the curriculum. They're paying you that amount of money because they feel it's going to give them an outcome or it's going to solve a problem. If you're on a 45-minute sales call, your pitch should be no more than 5 to 7 minutes. It should be short. It should check off the boxes. It should allow you to move forward in terms of the conversation, but you should not stay there trying to oversell the features. So instead of spending time, like 10 minutes going through every feature and every benefit, speak into the problems that they mentioned, which you should have uncovered if you did your discovery properly, the problems that they mentioned and how this is going to help overcome that and get them to the outcome. So it becomes more of a transition bridge than you just like pitching the features and the benefits. Now, a low close rate is almost never just a closing problem. Now, this is something I want to be careful with, but something either some reps never want to hear and other reps put too much blame. And this is what I'm going to go into exactly. Your low close rate, or if your close rate is low, your instinct is to get better at closing. And if you're within your first 6 months, that is all you should focus on. But at a certain point, you need to realize that a low close rate also means that there's probably other things going on. right? A qualification problem, a discovery problem, right? A lead quality problem. Maybe something in the funnel is broken. And that when you're aware of how to look for these themes upstream, right, you're going to know how to improve your process and improve your close rate as well. So you can't close your way out of getting the wrong people on the phone. Like people that would never buy, people that have never heard of what you do, people that are asking you like, wait, what do you guys do? Like, what's this call about? You can't outskill your way out of like getting on the phone to people that shouldn't be on the phone with you. But it's a slippery slope because reps that are weak will try and disqualify everyone, right? And so this is really what makes a good rep, is that they know who is a buyer and how to identify them upstream, but also not to let people off the phone when there's an opportunity to actually sell them. And that's a skill development opportunity right there. So when you're aware of this, then you're going to know on the offer that you're on, how do I improve the setting process, the qualification process, the warming sequence? That way, when I'm on the phone, people have some understanding of who we are and what we do, and then I can go deeper in the discovery a lot quicker. When you're able to do this, you're not going to be pitching everybody, right? You're going to be pitching the right people. You're also going to be managing your time because at a certain point, if you ever want to make real money in this industry, you need to accept the fact that you are a business owner and not an employee. And a business owner manages their time ruthlessly. So when you have an 8-hour calendar open, right, you know that you can make money for every calendar slot. But the only way you're going to do that is if you're qualifying people and the people that you're talking to should actually be on the calendar. You're not wasting this valuable calendar space with people that don't even want to be there. So that's something that also is a huge skill for most reps. A lot of the pre-qualification can be done not just by sending them resources, but sending them homework, getting creative. Like that way you can gauge their intent. You can see if this is someone that you can really like help make a $10,000 investment on the phone, or if there's someone that you're like, dude, get off my calendar. There's no way, even if you could buy this, that I even want you in my community with my clients. Now, it's important to understand these things because even though you as a sales rep aren't in direct control of changing all of these things like top of funnel and marketing, when you're aware of what these things look like, you're going to be more selective with the offers that you attach yourself to because you're only going to make so much money on an offer that's messy, where you're talking to extremely cold leads, where the VSL and all that's broken or changing every other week. You're only going to make a certain amount of money on that versus when you're on an account that has all of these things dialed, or when you know how to fix these things when it's a great opportunity of an account to be on. So when you can be thinking about how do I fix all these things as well, in addition to your closing skill, look, the fundamentals of sales haven't changed. People still buy from people they trust. People still move when the pain of staying the same outweighs the risk of changing. And they still need to believe that the likelihood of achievement is actually attainable. What has changed is how you get there. Shortcuts don't work anymore. The outdated scripts don't work anymore. The manipulation tactics don't work anymore. What works now is being an honest, direct, and challenging sales rep. Someone that will actually help someone feel what they haven't felt before. Go layers deeper than any other sales rep has been able to take them, and help them make the right decision for them. Help them feel if they should do this or not, and help them actually see that you have their best interests at heart. What works now is being an honest person, knowing when to challenge and when to actually say the thing that's uncomfortable. If you found this useful, drop a like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.